Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. It's May 23rd, 2021. And our topic this morning is that we're going to talk about standing on the threshold of faith, grace, and possibility. So, we wanted to talk about thresholds because of events going on in our lives and also because of this whole thing of coming out of the pandemic is a threshold. It's a it's a place where we make a change. And so I'd like to start by reading um, a reading from a book by John O'Donohue called To Bless the Space Between Us. And he says, at any time you can ask yourself, at which threshold am I now standing? At this time in my life, what am I leaving? Where am I about to enter? What is preventing me from crossing my next boundary? What gift would enable me to do it? A threshold is not a simple boundary, it's a frontier that divides two different territories, rhythms, and atmospheres. Indeed, it is a lovely testimony to the fullness and integrity of an experience or a stage of life that it intensifies towards the end into a real frontier that cannot be crossed without the heart being passionately engaged and woken up. At this threshold, a great complexity of emotion comes alive: confusion, fear, excitement, sadness, hope. This is one of the reasons that vital crossings were always clothed in ritual. It's wise in your own life to be able to recognize and acknowledge the key thresholds, to take your time to feel all the varieties of presence that accrue there, to listen inward with complete attention until you hear the inner voice calling you forward. The time has come to cross.
That's a great quote.
Did you want to say a few things about that?
No, not really. I think it pretty much explains it. So we're going to wrap it up now. For those of you that are joining us late, no. Well, I found a quote, and I love the idea of looking at uh, what we're dealing with on a daily basis as a threshold. That the most powerful part of that for me was recognizing it in any given moment we get to choose how we're going to be in that moment, and we get to recognize it not in terms of a reaction but in terms of a choice of action. And so he's really talking about a choice of mental attitude. He's talking about the ability to say, this is a safari, this is an adventure, this is an exquisite opportunity. And often we don't frame our experience that way, so we live it in kind of a reaction, a knee-jerk kind of way. And so much of what we do is not looked at. This is a threshold of an opportunity to make a decision that could change everything. Bringing that to the equation frees you up also to borrow from all parts of consciousness, your own mind and the mind that you're connected to, the greater mind, everything that's necessary and available. You know, when it's kind of like having a spiritual thesaurus. You can look at a word, and this is the word you normally would use, but when you're writing, think, how many other choices do I have? What is the best word for this? And you go through the thesaurus and you find words that take you into other places and think, wow, this is incredible. By the time you've constructed your sentence, hopefully, you've found the exact and perfect word to go with the exact perfect experience. And you framed it in a way that allows you to see it as an adventure. And so what I'm really talking about is shifting from the mundane way of seeing, the mundane way of treating the world as if, well, another day, and saying another day, another day. What does that mean? What threshold am I crossing now? I thought of it this morning when I had my cup of coffee, and I thought I was stirring the coffee and we had a little bit of powdered chocolate to it, which added something rather wonderful to it.
Cacao. Cacao,
Cacao.
not cocoa.
Cacao. And I was stirring it and I was thinking, I'm not going to drink this like a regular cup of coffee. I'm going to drink this like a special cup of coffee.
Because
And
it's cacao.
because it was, because it was special. I think in in the process of our daily living, we often allow the spectacular to become ordinary. We allow the ordinary to prevail. And in
Mhm.
fact, really, we have a chance to make it more than that. When he talks about, let me see, having rituals, the benefit of a ritual is not for the ritual's sake. The benefit of a ritual to dress up for an occasion, the ritual of going out for dinner to a fine restaurant includes preparing yourself. And you sit at the table having prepared yourself for this event. It's a different kind of an event than a fast food drive-through. And so what I'm suggesting is that look at your life and ask yourself, am I treating my life like a fast food drive-through? Or am I treating my life like it's a gourmet meal prepared at a very special restaurant with a very special person?
I like that.
And it changes everything. I have to share with my most fun experience. We went to a very, very fine French restaurant. We were given a gift certificate for a very expensive dinner that we probably never would have gone to. And the waiter, you see, he understood the necessity of treating it as an elegant experience. So he walked up to the table as any Frenchman would who owned the restaurant, even though he didn't. And he spoke to us in a way that said, this is an important event, and I am the master of this event. Would you like a drink? And I said, yes, I would. He said, what would you like? I said, I would like a scotch and soda. He said, do you have a particular scotch that you would like? I said, do you have Kirkland? To which,
Which is a Costco brand.
yeah, to which he stepped back, began laughing, and almost fell down because the threshold of elegance had been totally crushed. Having fun, allowing yourself to embrace the moment, allowing yourself to treat each threshold as an opportunity to go any way you want to go is so different than, so what are we going to do? Well, let's go out for dinner. Okay, so we go out to dinner. So how was dinner? Dinner was good. You see, if we're going to have a spectacular life, we're going to have a spectacular willingness to see the spectacular in life. We're going to have to be willing to adventure into life in a way that typically we don't. So the bottom line message for me in this wonderful quote was prepare yourself for a safari, not a trip to a fast food restaurant.
I like that. Well, our society has even lost a lot of the rituals of those major transition that more I hate to say the word primitive tribe, um, more indigenous peoples keep, such as entering puberty. They have very rigorous, usually, rituals for a boy to enter manhood. He's usually got to prove himself in great danger and perhaps even injury. And there are lots of rituals for girls entering womanhood with starting menses. Uh, then there are rituals with marriage, and of course, rituals um, with death. So those are the major transitions. But as we live so much longer, we have so many more transitions. We have changes of careers. We have changes of spouses. We have what that are major changes in your life, and those are wonderful thresholds to do this introspection that he's talking about and say, how now am I going to be different in this new way of being? Um, I am entering a new phase of self-acceptance and self-love, because I've been very fortunate in my life to always be very healthy and if I've had challenges, of course, along the way. We all do, but by and large, I haven't had any major um, physical or personal achievement setbacks. And so this has been really challenging for me because what I tend to do is self-criticize if I'm anything less than perfect. So I'm always having to work on this perfectionism. And I recently had a diagnosis and that had to have some surgery this week. And the first thing I do is go to what's wrong with me. What did I do wrong? What did I think wrong? What did I feel wrong? And I really do believe what we think and feel create our experience. So it's easy to go to that place. And I've got to tell you, that's not helpful. That's not helpful. What is helpful is to to love yourself, to accept yourself, and to not expect yourself to be perfect. So the transition that I find myself in right now is to try to enter into this phase, and it's going to take some real writing and journaling and thinking, and to every time I get into self-criticism, to switch that to self-love. In my meditation this morning, it was about loving myself like my parents loved me, you know. And it doesn't they didn't think I was perfect when they loved me, but they certainly loved me unconditionally anyway. And that's the way that I want to talk to myself, think about myself. And I think that's what's necessary really for true healing.
In any experience, we have the opportunity, if we choose to treat it as a threshold, an entry into a greater space. September the 9th, 2014, I had a stroke. It was an ordinary stroke, serious for me, but ordinary as far as the medical community is concerned. When I got to the hospital, I was an ordinary patient having an ordinary stroke who might die. And when the nurse came to take my blood pressure, I asked her to please stop. And she said, "What?" And I said, "Tell me a little bit about you. Tell me, do you have children? Do you like your job?" And she stopped and she looked and she answered the questions. And then she said, "Why did you ask me these questions? You're having a stroke." And I said, "You see, because for me right now, this could be my last conversation. You're my family." I treat it as a threshold for something that was important more than a medical event. What happened was interesting. She then told other staff about the conversation we'd had and how different that was than what she was accustomed to. Before long, I found the entire emergency room staff rooting for me and making the rounds to say hello and how are you doing and we're on your side. We want it to go well. And when I was then transported to intensive care and I began to get better, fortunately, the intensive care nurse said, "We've heard about you." And I thought, is that good or bad? Because in school, that was never a good thing. And she thought it was a good thing. But what I want to share with you is in the middle of what could have been, in fact, what was a life crisis,
Yes, I guess so.
I treated it as the threshold for an opportunity for something more, for something to happen that was bigger than the event that was occurring in my life. And of course, not only did I survive it, but I actually have thrived as a result of that experience, which is different from how it might have been.
Absolutely. I came across a reading about a Japanese concept
Mm,
that fits here, and
I love
we
this.
we really need to embrace this in our teaching. Um, where we know we're responsible for creating our experience, and our experience is not always perfect. Um, and so this is called this is a Japanese concept. The Japanese view that life and art are beautiful not because they're perfect and eternal, but because they are imperfect and fleeting. And it is so deeply ingrained in Japan that it's difficult to explain to Westerners because the direct translation only hints at the depths of this way of seeing and being. Wabi sabi is the cracked ceramic vase mended with gold.
This is before Amazon.
The wabi sabi. Um, the cherry blossom resting on a perfectly raked rock garden. The imperfect rim of a teacup, and the weathered faces of wise elders. And it is also a concept most of us could learn a lot from as we wrestle with our own perceived physical and emotional imperfections and how the cracks in our own lives might be lined with gold. When we're able to adapt to the changes and the unexpected turns in our lives, extract lessons from our broken open moments, and appreciate imperfection and impermanence, we are also able to find value in the passing of time and live each day to the fullest. So that is what my threshold is about, to embrace our imperfections, our impermanence, and live fully in the moment. And you live fully in the moment by appreciating the moment, by appreciating what is, not wishing for what isn't. Now, this is it's kind of a dichotomy because the last part of our title um, was embracing
Faith,
faith,
grace,
grace, and
and possibility.
possibilities. And we believe in our teaching, this teaching of the science of mind, that all things are possible and that it's up to us to use the law of mind to create them. And I found some quotes in the Science of Mind book that I want to share, where Ernest Holmes says, the possibilities of the law are infinite, and our possibilities of using it are limitless. There is such a thing as universal law and mind, and we can use it if we comply with its nature, work with it. We may or should receive full benefit, and we will to the degree that we understand and properly use the law. Thousands are today proving this law, and in time, all will come to realize its truth. And I believe that. I believe all things are possible. And I believe that nobody gets through this life without challenges and imperfections and impermanence. I heard another speaker, I've just got to say one thing, but I heard another speaker who said she's been living with terminal cancer for 18 years. And
Slow termination.
yeah, she's doing great actually and teaching it. But she says, being human is a terminal condition. you know, it's it's a terminal condition. We're not here indefinitely.
What strikes me is how often when something happens to us or when a moment opens for us, how quickly we jump to the conclusion of the moment. We draw a conclusion, we make a judgment about the moment, and we actually close off the adventure, the opportunity for grace and for possibility.
Mhm.
And so when you talk about a diagnosis, very often people believe in a diagnosis more than they believe in a healing. They
Right.
believe in what's wrong with them more than they believe what's right with them. They don't realize when they think of what's wrong with them, the conditions that exist for them to have whatever is wrong be corrected, and the strength and the power of that. And and so when we live in the conclusion rather than in the process, we tend to get the conclusion hammered through us again and again and again. So the question would you be willing to suspend the conclusion that you might normally get to? And if you could suspend knowing the conclusion, then you could live more, not only in the moment, but you could find more spaces for grace and possibility and opportunity. I have been listening because we've been listening to a lot of tapes recently around people who've survived cancer. And one of the things that's the most striking about hearing these stories is how many people have found their life in amidst their disease.
Exactly. Yeah.
They because what's happened is they
It was a
suddenly
threshold.
right. The threshold was you may not be around very long. What are you going to do? And you see, the trouble is when we think we're going to be around a long time, we start getting ready for the long time later, as opposed to I don't know how long I'm going to be here. How about if I do everything I need to do right now? The thing is, we can have broken moments, but we're not broken. We can have broken moments and feel broken, but we're not broken. And the parts of us that are broken can heal. We were designed to heal. We were designed from the, in fact, the most interesting thing to me about an injury, any injury that you can think of, the seconds after the injury has occurred, the body begins to do everything it possibly can to heal the event. It's our nature to heal. So my question is, if it's our nature to heal, it's an automatic response. Why are we so eager to invest energy in the not healing, in the brokenness, in the what's wrong with us? And how come since I'm not perfect, maybe that's what's wrong with me. We seem to be so fault driven as opposed to grace, love, possibility driven.
Right. This young woman I listened to yesterday, his name is Chris Carr. And at 31 years of age, she was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. But she had 24 tumors throughout her body. She went to one physician and he said, I recommend 3 organ transplants. And she said, thank you very much. No, thank you. And she left because that just didn't resonate with her. And then she went to another one. He recommended something really severe too. And she said, thank you. No, thank you. And she has, sought her own alternative treatments and now teaches them. And that was 18 years ago. I mean,
Mhm.
she was 31 when that happened. She's beautiful. She's 49 now, and she's written a book called "Crazy Sexy Cancer." I haven't read the book, but I kudos to her. She's been on Oprah's Super Soul 100 series and is really inspirational.
You know, an awful lot of life events remind me of these. If you've ever had the occasion of clicking on your Facebook page to an advertisement for something, this will cure whatever it is. Cure it with one simple step. And then you turn on the video, and then you hear this long story about how the doctor has walked through hell to get to the point where he could then discover the thing that's going to change you. An hour and 20 minutes later, you're just getting closer to the thing that you tuned in for. And I swear that so much of our life is getting ready for the conclusion rather than living in the experience.
Yeah, exactly. So, in conclusion, we just want to say, examine what threshold you might be on as we're about to re-enter being together again as a society. Hopefully, it looks like that's happening. And so a lot of people are looking at their lives and say, what do I want to do differently? What do I want to do the same? How do I want to be in the world? A lot of young people are choosing not to go back to their profession, what the job they were doing. If it was, they had put one foot in front of the other and they were not happy with where they ended up, although it was okay while they were doing it. Now that they've had a chance to be with themselves, think, no, I don't want to do that again.
Some of the research that was done recently, which really interesting, surveys that were done recently indicated that single people that had been alone for this last year, out of all of them, 18% were interested in having sex just for the sake of it. And over 60% wanted to have a personal relationship, which is really interesting. So the driving force through this has been a desire for intimacy, not uh, not not
Not hooking up.
not a fast fix. And so interesting that this has changed us. But what I would like to add to that, allow yourself to create in your mind the idea that this is a threshold. Allow
Yeah.
yourself to create to take each moment and say, this is a sacred moment. When you have a glass of water, look at it, drink it slowly, allow yourself to realize this is nourishment for the body. And if you'll do that in more and more areas, then you'll see more thresholds for joy, for opportunity, for grace, and for love.
Exactly.
Now we've got, no, go ahead.
So let's close with a closing prayer.
Right. And then we're going to have some music.
We're going to have some music. So let's go within and know the truth of our being. We acknowledge, we celebrate that there is one source of all life, one power, one presence that is everywhere present, and it is present within every cell of our being. With it and through it, we live and move and have our being. And we know that as we speak our word, this word is made manifest. So I know the truth for all of us here is that we are love. We are loved. And as we come into a greater self love and self acceptance, we are able to connect and love one another in a greater and greater way. We know that this is true for us. We know that it makes life more joyous. We give thanks for it. And together we say,
And so it is.
so it is. And so now we're going to, we'll end the recording